Hey everyone, welcome back to the studio. Of course, it's not really a studio. We're all still working remotely because we're digital first. And that is the topic of the second in our conversations, where we're looking at digital first thinking. And, digital's been around for 2 decades. So we're not saying that it's new of itself, but rather this idea that digital first thinking can open up not only the e-commerce channel, but how we use our offline channels, the new social channels, everything from customer engagement through to delivery. What does digital first thinking mean, and how do we put that into play? So rather than just us pontificating, I thought we'd get a few digital leaders to think around this and give us an insight into their thinking. So to join me today, we have Dan and Simon returning to the studio, and then 2 new people joining us around the digital table, Michelle and Dan. So why don't we kick off, Michelle, just tell us a little bit about you and your business, and then we'll just go on the table to introduce ourselves quickly. Michelle, take us away.
Yeah, sure. Hello, so I'm Michelle from Lily's Kitchen. Lily's Kitchen is a premium pet food brand, so we sit within the consumer goods space. So we have quite a few e-commerce channels, but I very specifically lead the direct-to-consumer proposition.
Thank you. Dan Mahoney.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from, maybe. So I'm Dan from Whittard of Chelsea. My role is customer director here. So Whittard is a British brand that has been around since 1886. So we will be 135 years old next year. We sell the finest tea, coffee, and hot chocolate. And I guess the journey that we've been going on is from traditional shopkeeping all over the country to starting to build a digital proposition for our customers, which of course is starting to accelerate as consumer behavior changes over the last few years.
I was just thinking that from a lockdown perspective, then you two kind of cover the 2 most important things, which is keep the cats happy and have plenty of hot chocolate around the house to keep the kids happy. So it's like a perfect pairing. Dan, tell us first off who you are and where you're from and the role of digital first in your world.
Yeah, hi everyone.
We need a code for Dan.
We've got 2 Dans.
Let's have a hot chocolate Dan and other Dan. Mr. Fountain, tell us a bit about you and Tryzens.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan Fountain. I'm MD of Tryzens in the UK. For those of you who logged in last time, I'm still Dan Fountain. I'm still MD of Tryzens in the UK. I haven't moved roles. So we're an international digital commerce agency. We work with clients such as Sweaty Betty, Liberty, Whittard, Lily's Kitchen, to deliver the best possible experience across all of their digital channels.
Great. And Simon, last but not least, tell us a bit about you and digital first at Salesforce.
All right, thank you very much, Ian, for inviting me here again. So my name is Simon Ruiz Tada. I lead the industry go-to-marketing function in EMEA for retail. And at Salesforce, of course, we sell B2C and both B2B CRM to our customers going through any form of digital transformation. And for us, digital is our business. And now we converse with our retailers under the really shared understanding that digital really used to be the outpost for the store strategy. But with that thinking really needs to be replaced by the mindset that brick and mortar is really just a component of a retailer's digital strategy. So without any form of digital, there's no growth, period. Is really our mantra.
And so you were digital first. We've always known you as a digital company. Has anything changed with you? Or have you just been saying, it's all the same, we're just doing more of it? Or has the pace and extent of digital adoption changed anything within your business? Because I know a lot of you are working at home, for example. You had that before, that's accelerated. in any way, have you become more digital as a result of COVID?
Absolutely. I think as a CRM company, I think we use our own products, digital CRM. We use Sales Cloud to do B2B selling. But I think it did accelerate in the fact that we didn't allow any of our employees to go to our offices 100%. We decided to do that from March onwards, globally, depending on where you were around the globe. We also decided to launch a product around how you can actually even go back to the office safely with contact tracing and so forth. So we did accelerate, of course, towards how we think about digital strategy with our customers, but we had to also look back into thinking, okay, what does digital mean for a technology company like us? So that we need to be drinking our own champagne.
Well, you say drinking your own champagne. I say eating your own dog food, which is a very clunky segue back to Michelle. Apologies for that. So let's have a think then. We've established you running digital channels, your direct consumer, your wholesale. What are your measures as a digital leader? So how do you measure success, both in general and then any specific digital only metrics? What is success as you look at your business, Michelle?
I think it probably is very similar to most people's in terms of, year-on-year growth. Sales obviously is incredibly important, and our levels of acquisition from a new customer point of view. But Lily's is quite unique in the fact that we do have quite a channel agnostic perspective. We know that people will use Lily's website, but they might go into a supermarket and buy it. So we are pretty, we understand that that's the way that it is. So our website almost forms a bit of a shop front for the brand, and then we're able to reach our customers from a brand perspective through the website, but then we fully expect them to be shopping in different places. So we kind of also have loyalty and retention as probably one of the most important benchmarks that I look at. So whilst we can see that customers will shop elsewhere, we can kind of do a lot of basket analysis to understand, whether they are shopping in other places or whether they are new to Lily's Kitchen online. So for us, it's really about sort of recognizing that, different environments drive different customer behaviors. So we just try to move a little bit with the metrics rather than being quite so formulaic about it.
And so how does that work? If I'm the head of e-commerce there, it's always rather painful to say I'm giving up sales because I've sent them over to Waitrose, Tesco's, Pets at Home, wherever else they've gone to get you. Say, it's all right, I don't want the sales, I'm all about the brand love. I honestly don't know any e-commerce director that really believes that when they say it. So how do you make sure that there is a coherence rather than a fight for that sale in the here and now?
I think the proof is in the pudding a little bit. I mean, we're successful in all channels, and I think it's because of the fact that we work so closely together, and we don't have that fight over where is that customer, that it's my customer, not yours. We very much are about being where the customer is and making sure that we're supporting them, because this is through COVID, pet food was an essential product. This is not a sort of a luxury gifting item. This is essential product to get your pet fed. So that's more of a perspective for us to understand and make sure that we're meeting the customer need, despite where they're coming from.
And have you introduced any new metrics as a result of the lockdown and the growth? Because I have this vision of you all being collegiate and lovely together and all the channels growing in harmony. And then next thing you know, boom, it's lockdown. Got to get more product out there. The cats are wailing, the dogs are barking, the owners are crying their eyes out. Did you have to change anything? Is there a new metric you think, haha, got to keep an eye on that in order to manage this new explosion of demand?
It's definitely retention, because obviously, clearly, e-commerce is driving a lot of growth. So we know that the retention online gives us a very good perspective on how people how they're moving around their environments now, whether they're using retail as much as what they used to. And we can clearly see that people are going much more online into e-commerce channels.
Okay, good. Well, my cats are definitely addicts, so I do wonder what you're putting in the ingredients, because they're not giving up on it. Now, Dan, let's turn to you, because one of the things I think is interesting is your role as customer director. So not e-com director, but very much starting with the customer perspective. So has this move from the old days of when you were an e-commerce director to now being a customer director, has that changed how you measure success? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think Michelle started to answer it exactly as I would have done, is that it's really about customer metrics. So rather than focusing on digital metrics, we're really trying to understand how our customers are using and behaving in different channels, and also those sort of pen portraits of your most loyal, most valuable customers. How do they get to the point where they're absolutely your brand loyalists? They want to tell your story. They're coming to see you really regularly. They're excited about every product launch. And so the thing that we've been trying to focus a lot more on is understanding what the early stages of those journeys look like for customers, so that we can try and replicate them or impact them in the right moment. So for our brand, that could be about cross category and the role of whether a tea customer commonly also buys coffee from us, for example. And then also big thing for Whittard is understanding gifting moments. So it's trying to understand when a customer's buying for themselves and when they're buying for someone else, and how to sort of segment that in the right moment, which can be very tricky. You don't necessarily always get the sort of the conversation with the customer telling you, by the way, these are gifts and it's for this reason. So that's what we've tried to sort of be a lot more intelligent with, is using digital to understand the mindset of our customers and how we can be more helpful and valuable. And that even more amplified this year, I would say, when being helpful, being valuable feels more important than ever for a brand.
So help me understand the reality, maybe with an example or some heuristics. So we all talk about understanding customer intent, and someone is bound to say AI or machine learning at some point, where you can sense my brain waves as soon as I touch my keyboard. But unless I actually put 40 of the same items in with 40 different delivery addresses, what indications are there that I'm in a gifting mood rather than just buying 40 chocolate spoons for my own sweet tooth gratification? What are the heuristics you use to say, aha, he's on a gifting journey, or she is replenishing the office coffee machine with 20 kilos of the best roast? What are those heuristics, and how do you really get your fingers on that at the beginning of the journey?
Yeah, I mean, as always with that challenge, it's data is one of the biggest challenges, and how you connect it all together. And I think one thing that we've definitely got better at, I would say, over the last few years is we were trying to be perfect with all our analysis initially, and trying to get to build these sort of absolutely robust 360 view of a customer and where they're interacting and how they're behaving, and then try and adapt our journeys based on that, as opposed to just really trying to start better understanding how groups of customers are sort of moving through their experience at Whittard, so that we can just spot trends and then test different parts of communication within the journey. I don't mean to sort of jump into talking about this year, but one thing that's been really helpful about customers almost being, in my business, being forced online, is that we're able to understand more about our retail customers. So we've had some of our loyal store customers who had never bought from us online, and I think had probably never really even considered buying from us online or even using our website, have now been forced to do that if they want to sort of continue their relationship with us. And that's enabled us to understand more about what they need and what type of information they want from Whittard, and what's going to be exciting for them at the right moment in time. So that's been a really been lots of challenges, of course, by having shops closed this year, but there's been lots of positives about understanding more about what our customers truly need from a digital service perspective, and how we can help their journey and make it even more bespoke and tailored to their need.
And Michelle, thanks, Dan. How have you approached data? Because you've got a wholesale model where you have one account, let's say, called Waitrose, and nothing other than units sold. And the next minute you've got one person on your website delivering to an address, maybe someone else in the family. How do you go about developing this view of the customer that brings together the wholesale, the direct, the family approach? There's a lot of data to put together there.
There is, and I think it steps back to what I said before around being quite channel agnostic, because you can quite clearly see based on people's baskets whether they're new to Lily's Kitchen or whether they buy elsewhere, because you don't buy a 12 kg bag of dog food if you're new to a brand. You just wouldn't. You'd buy the smallest size possible to check whether it actually, because ultimately you've got to be so careful with an animal. If you're putting it onto a new food or everything that you do, it's all about very slowly and getting the animal used to it, because you don't want them to be poorly. So you would come in and you would buy a small item just to see if they liked it. You might come to Lily's Kitchen and buy a treat, or maybe a wolf brush, which is our dental product. So you might buy those and they would probably be fine. So we can see by baskets and that sort of information whether they are, whether they're absolutely new to D2C or whether they are shopping in other channels.
Fascinating. Now, Simon, you mentioned we are a CRM company. So this lands very much in your bailiwick, which is the maturing of CRM from what Dan said, which is this big database, the impossible dream of 360-degree view. How are you expressing this single view of the customer now? We've heard CRM as a term, we've heard single view, we've heard behavioral stuff, we've looked at the clues. What is the state of art? How should we be talking about this channel agnostic customer view from a digital first perspective?
How should we be thinking about it is an interesting topic. I think we need to be several keywords there that are important, which is sort of still a buzzword, is definitely omni-channel, of course. But there's several dimensions to this topic, right? There's the architecture side, there's the cultural side, and there's also the customer side, which has to be all of them being feasible, viable, and desirable from the customer. So what we really believe that when we say customer 360, what we really mean is customer maybe 270, because let's be realistic, because we can't get all the data or touch points that really matters to our customers, right? We need to be very selective of the channels that we engage with our customers. So that's what we sort of converse with our retailers, especially the ones that go direct to consumers, is do you really need to have a WhatsApp channel with your customers? Do you really need to have a Facebook Messenger, right? You need to be able to know your customers to understand which channels are the right touch points to really have that better view of the customer. So, being omni-channel for the sake of omni-channel is just not the right strategy. We need to understand, look, as a digital company, of course, we need to offer the fact that if you want to be able to connect with your consumer with WeChat or through WhatsApp or through TikTok, it doesn't really matter, right? What really matters is that we have the right channels to serve, and being able to share a single view across the business to be able to serve that purpose for that specific function. So you don't, from an architectural point of view as well, you don't need to have the same visibility of a customer for a service agent or through a marketing agent or through even a person that deals with commerce.
Yeah, interesting. Now, Dan, last time we were chatting, we were talking quite a bit about the increase in demand you've seen, because everybody now wants to amp up their digital channels. So as you're looking at the market, you're hearing this, channel agnostic, customer first rhetoric coming out. What are you saying to people in order to help them prepare to really deliver on or take a step forward in a better digital first customer conversation?
But I think I think certainly with a D2C brand, the fact that you're pushing more customers, whether that's through, unfortunately, stores being closed, or whether it's just through learned customer behavior, but more customers are engaging with brands at a first touch point online, usually via the website, but via different channels. And therefore, your opportunity to explain your brand, explain your values as a brand, effectively communicate that story to your customers is absolutely key. So, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that an e-commerce site is there for customers to be able to purchase, but it's also there for them to understand the brand and understand that story straight away. So whereas before, if it take Whittard as an example, Dan mentioned that you've got customers who are engaging with Whittard online for the first time in their story. They need to understand what that brand is, but it might be the first time that customer's ever engaged with Whittard. And so rather than getting that immersive experience that they would get from going into a store, we need to make sure that they get that experience from visiting the site.
Thank you. Now, let's move then from the customer, just briefly, and think about the impact that these changes have had. So Dan Chocolate mentioned the drive of consumers online. So maybe let's just start with Michelle. How has COVID and the lockdown impacted your business?
Yeah, so obviously it's been very positive. I think, as I said at the beginning, that we are obviously an essential, pet food was an essential item throughout COVID. So a lot of pet stores remained open. So, and obviously supermarkets were open, and our product is available in supermarkets. So I think potentially our story might be slightly different to, say, a fashion or a gifting retailer. So we've obviously seen that positive impact. And I think what we did, and our probably biggest challenge was, as a business, really working hard to retain that sort of supply chain and meet the customer need. And actually, to be honest with you, from a business perspective, our supply chain and our customer care team were pretty much the rock stars of our business throughout that. They just were incredible. I mean, so, customer care, and there was a lot of people getting puppies and spending a lot of time with their pets, so lots of contact on those sorts of subjects, and just generally around how long might it take me to get my order, because lots of new customers were coming to us online. So those guys worked really, really hard. So as a business, that was a really important thing for us in terms of impact. I think the most important thing that we just try to do as a brand is provide that level of reassurance to the customer. We know that animals are really important to people, and we just really want, the pets to be happy and their owners to be happy. And yes, all of the content that we put out around that time was very much around supporting people and being there for them, really. And I think that's certainly how it kind of panned out for us.
And did the growth in digital necessitate any changes within the business in terms of resourcing, staff management, planning, or was it just sort of absorbed naturally?
We were already in a great position in terms of being able to support it, actually. So we didn't actually need to have any additional resource. It was probably just slightly changing some of our working practices and processes to make sure that we were in the right place. But pretty much we handled that quite well.
And in terms of visibility, I mean, if you're looking at a customer support center, normal calls might be, tell me about the ingredients, is it right for my arthritic dog or puppy, etc., etc. Whereas it sounds what you're saying is if there's been even more impact on supply chain visibility. So how much do you have? When's it coming? Can you get it to me? Can you deliver to the third floor, et cetera, et cetera? How did you bring that supply chain visibility so it was at the fingertips or the eyeballs of your customer-facing direct staff?
It's all about comms. We have a really close, I mean, we're not a massive team from a business perspective, you know, just over 50 people. So, you know, we work and communicate very closely. So it really was around just making sure that those meetings were in and we had those daily check-ins and everybody had visibility on everything that was happening across each of the channels. Mm-hmm. But certainly, you know, some of the most visited areas of our sites over COVID were around, you know, how do I get a puppy and what should I do with a puppy and all that kind of support element that goes with, you know, making a choice. And certainly when we were doing lots of SEO research, one of the biggest search terms from an SEO perspective was a quiz on what dog is right for me. You know, people just really wanted to make sure they made the right choice on the breed. And so, I mean, it's a huge decision getting a pet, you know, it's for life, isn't it? So, you know, it is the dog or the animal's life. So, you know, it's a really important decision for people that want to get it right.
Good. Well, nearly as important as the right pet, of course, is the right coffee or tea blend. So, Dan, let's jump over to you. You were mentioning earlier on about your stores, and obviously at the first stage of lockdown, your stores closed. So maybe just tell us about the impact that had on the business and how you went from, you know, being a primary store identifiable business to an online one.
Yeah, so it was you know, for everybody a sort of very fast moving period of time. Yeah, and it went from, you know, starting to feel like we had to be more considerate around the flow of people into our stores to them being closed in what felt like no time at all. And if you sort of go back to the beginning of the lockdown, you know, of course, people were struggling to get supermarkets. People didn't want to necessarily go to the supermarket. They were struggling to get online deliveries. So also, we were having in certain parts of our business also new customers. You know, we were sort of people searching, how can I get coffee? I just need coffee. I'm going to be locked up at home for the next 2 weeks. And so people were also, I think, probably true of all of us here, have tried new brands or you know, in certain areas of the life, right? And I think that's sort of quite an interesting concept. So at the beginning of this period, it's all a bit like, I just need the stuff I need and I need it, and I'm terrified about not being able to have it, whatever it is. But that's kind of changed as time's gone on, and the word time actually is sort of something I think that's really interesting with regards to the customer. Is, you know, for years as retailers, we've been talking about frictionless commerce experiences, and the customer's so busy and they've got so many things to do, and how do you play a role within someone's hectic day? And there is potentially a slight shift happening here around customers wanting to spend a bit more time engaging with the buying process of certain things, being more inquisitive about certain parts of their routine or their day, you know, and wanting to sort of learn about what they're buying in more detail. And that's certainly something that we saw. So, you know, we were seeing much higher engagement levels, for example, in our digital content than we'd ever seen before. You know, so seeing better levels of engagement for pieces of learning around how to brew loose leaf tea or which piece of coffee equipment to use, versus the more commercial pieces of content always receiving the best responses, which is, you know, when you're involved in sort of content development ideas and trying to tell your brand story, that's very frustrating when, you know, you're struggling to get that to cut through. And when it starts becoming more, you know, having a higher amount of resonance with the customer, it's quite gratifying that people are, I am interested. So we were able to actually go through some of our content archives and look at some of the things that we've created over the last couple of years, and found that they were more pertinent to customers. That then created us a challenge, because it was like, crikey, we need a lot more content. so then, that's been one of the things that we've tried to figure out internally is how can we then feed the communication engine to be interesting to customers and be helpful and be relevant.
So how have you gone about that? Because I'm a coffee addict, so you can talk to me about coffee all day, but I can't really remember the last time I snuggled up and read about loose leaf tea. So where are you getting these ideas? Are they customer generated? Are they expert led? New product? Where is this development coming from?
Yes, I think what we've really tried to focus on is also talking to customers who are starting their journey with the brand, and and it's some of the discussions that we've been having internally is still how some of our core business language it doesn't make sense to someone starting their journey with you, and it makes large parts of your range very inaccessible. So I still feel sometimes when you go into a Whittard store, hopefully you have this amazing feeling of the smell and sense that's in there, and the sort of excitement of, crikey, look at all these interesting things that are going on in here. But it's also quite intimidating. Like there's a sort of a wall of tea over there, and there's sort of lots of different coffee over here, and lots of sort of weird pieces of equipment that I've never seen before. And then lots of bright coloured hot chocolate, and what's that? And so we've really just tried to come back to the core of like making that simple and accessible for people. So it's like, oh, you have 100 teas. Well, where do I start? What's a green tea? When would I drink it? And I think, when I joined Whittard, I think one of the things I had assumed, I learned that we had some, a group of very loyal customers. And so my assumption was these people would only ever drink Whittard products. They are absolute brand loyalists, would never be seen with a different cup of tea in their hand. And that's not true. That wasn't true. That, only learned that from talking to customers. And there was a big association with time. And it was, I like drinking your product when I have time. So when I have time in the evening, or I have my Saturday morning. But at work, I wouldn't drink your product because I don't have the time. I just need something that, wets my palate and gives me a caffeine buzz. And of course, this relationship between customers and time is changing, right? As we're all at home a lot more. And so we've seen much higher engagement in things like equipment. So we're trying. So that's actually changing the role of equipment in our business. And coming back to Michelle's point at the beginning about customer centricity and retention, it's like which sort of pieces of equipment glue our range together, and how do we sort of take the customer on that journey? And that's been really, really quite fascinating. And I think we've still got lots of learning to do there. But that's a big change.
Interesting. Okay, just very quickly, the second we move on to the strategy and planning aspects, and we'll move on to Simon. This is a moment to think. But just quickly, Dan, before we leave you, what's had to change in your business? So obviously the stores have had to adapt. E-commerce grown. You're bringing this together. Has this all been plain sailing? Michelle was saying that everyone's flexed and sort of absorbed the change. Has it been the same with you, or have different teams or people or roles had to adapt and evolve for this new way of trading?
There's been a lot of adapting, yes, and I think some of the sort of areas around operational readiness, that having such a material channel shift in a short period of time. Just means there's many things that need to be different, whether it's inventory in a different place, or customer service support, or the ability to do e-commerce versus retail shipments. That matrix has changed and continues to change. But I think probably the biggest thing, which is sort of, it's about changing consumer behavior, changing channel shifts, but it's I'm sure we all have this problem, but it's still so easy to return to type. If you've been working in a company for time, is you can still get clouded by, oh, this thing's going to go away at some point and everything will return to what it was like, and we'll be able to think that way again. And so we've just like continually as a team having to sort of wrestle with one another to sort of be like, guys, like the world really has changed quite materially here. and the sort of consumer landscape is very different to what it was just 9 months ago, and that's likely to stay that way. So therefore, we have to think differently. We have to be different. We have to find different solutions, different ways. And it's everything from maybe the type of product, but certainly the way that you talk, the way that we're putting our energy and our resources into the business. And yeah, I guess it's for all of us, it's just so easy to kind of revert to type and, you know, is the project list still relevant? And so we just need to keep saying, you know, checking ourselves, I guess, which is more difficult than it kind of should be, but it's yeah, especially
you know, because we've all gotten to where we are by doing certain things, and so changing those is always a challenge. So I mean, in a way,
that's a great example. I mean, I remember sort of, you know, someone talking to me years ago about an e-commerce job, and they were saying, "Oh, Dan, you know, you know what it's like, you e-commerce directors, when you turn up in a new role, you've got your own little playbook that you do, and you know that'll do well for sort of 6 to 9 months, and away you go." And that's just a really good example of like that probably isn't going to work, right? You have to be different. You've got to try and understand what's changed and adapt to it.
I think that's the real adaptation, so rather than just absorbing it temporarily and bouncing back. Well, look, that brings us on to the strategic aspect. So, you know, time sadly is starting to run out. So let's maybe jump over to Simon and let's look forward. So Q4 is well, it's not just upon us; it's started. So we're looking at one of the busiest traditional parts of the year. In your view, Simon, what needs to be different for this Q4 in terms of rapid planning and execution? What are your tips for how, having heard what Michelle and Dan have said, what are the takeaways for strategy this quarter?
Great. I mean, of course, the preparation for the holiday seasons has probably been building up already till now. I think it will be no surprise to Michelle or Dan to say that obviously online commerce will accelerate. When I give it numbers, we really believe that this is going to be over 30% of the holiday revenues being digital, being online. And we also believe that even 10 to 15% of the sales are actually made through social. So one of the many conversations that we have with retailers to be prepared for holidays is to extend the buy button across channels, not just by the store or just e-commerce. And also be prepared for the surge of service requests early on, because we really believe that Amazon Prime Day is actually going to be shifted, given that they also believe that there's going to be an influx of demand that comes very early. So after Q4 has been over, I think it'll be also, we will also anticipate that retailers would really take a step back and really reflect again the outsourcing issue topic there, and to really rethink how they maintain the right balance between digital and store, to understand whether they had to reskill the store employees or understand what exactly were the right channels to engage with the customers. I think there's going to be a lot of reflection, because it's one of the most interesting year of experimentation with digital this year.
Wow, experimentation under pressure. Dan, Mr. Fountain, let's round off with you then. So you have a lot of people ringing you up saying, help me now. I haven't got time to wait till next year. I've got growth, new services, integration, just do it now. What are you saying to people about how they should approach this quarter? And as Simon was mentioning, if there's a lull, how they should think about next year once it arrives.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is I don't think there'll be a lull. I think that we're going into a peak from a peak. You know, to be clear, none of us know. We've not gone through a peak during a pandemic before. But my strong feeling is that we are going to go into a peak, but already from high levels of online trading. So I think that the gifting experience, which we talked about earlier on, is going to be absolutely vital. That last mile piece about what your product looks like when it's delivered to someone, because there are going to be fewer people who are going to go on a big shopping expedition for the day to buy all their gifts in one hit. So you know, making sure that people realise they're opening a gift or receiving a gift rather than just a a cardboard box through the post. I think it's really important. And how people are going to behave post peak and into the quarter after. I think that's the $1 million question. None of us know.
Give us your estimate then.
Well,
Dan.
I think it will carry on going, if I'm truthful. I mean, a lot will depend very much on what happens in the market, what happens in terms of further lockdowns and further measures that are going on. But I think that the change to digital, and as you said right at the beginning, that's been going on for some time, but the rapid change that we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months, I think will continue, because I think the vast majority of that will stick. And I think you've got consumers who are now shopping online that wouldn't have shopped online before. My mum's a good example, who will carry on shopping online. And I can only see, in terms of digital performance, that continuing post-peak.
Good. Well, let's obviously keep our digital fingers crossed that the peak is, actually peaky, and it does continue. We will be coming back to digital first thinking. I think one of the things we want to pick up on is digital service. So we've seen with Michelle and Dan how store and physical product is benefiting by the channel shift, but those were maybe service, leisure, entertainment businesses in a very demanding sector. How is digitalization helping them? And there's some good case studies there. So I think Dan, Simon, in a future episode, we can come back to focus on that. But for now, it's a big thank you to all of our guests, especially because we've got some new concepts. We have 270-degree customer view from Simon, which I'm just rushing to see if the domain is available. And Mr. Mahoney's given us, I think, this beautiful picture of time and how that's a new dimension, if you like, within retailing rather than the transaction. And Michelle has given us this lovely view of a product that's at the heart of a family and the pet. So I'm feeling caffeinated and cozy all in one go. So I hope you'll all join with me in thanking Dan, Simon, and Michelle for being so open and talking with us through these thoughts on digital first thinking. So until our next episode on this, thank you all and happy trading.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good week.